The crystalline dome of the Galactic Council chamber glittered with the light of 3 setting suns, casting prismatic shadows across the assembled delegates. Dr. Jessica Thompson clutched her data tablet, her heart pounding against her ribs as she waited to be called. At 34, she was the youngest Xenorchaeologist ever to address the council, and possibly the last person anyone expected to upend decades of accepted history. Dr. Thompson, High Counselor Varax's translucent appendages rippled with bioluminescent patterns of acknowledgement. You claim to have evidence that contradicts the settlement of 2157. Proceed. Jessica squared her shoulders and stepped onto the floating platform. As it rose above the tiered seats of the chamber, she fought back the urge to fidget with her collar. The settlement of 2157 wasn't just history. It was the official documentation of humanity's extinction, or what everyone had believed was their extinction. Distinguished members of the council, her voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic enhancement field. 18 hours ago, the Deep Space Monitoring Array detected this. She gestured, and a holographic waveform materialized in the air. The pattern pulsed with a complexity that drew murmurs from the assembled aliens. A quantum signal, she continued, originating from Earth's coordinates. But it's not just any signal. It's encoded using a modified version of the Fibonacci sequence, a mathematical pattern humanity was known to favor. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. A Medusan delegate's crystalline form chimed in agitation. Impossible. Earth was rendered uninhabitable by the impact event. Our own surveys confirmed the planet's surface temperature exceeded 2000 Kelvin, yes. Jessica interrupted, earning a disapproving flutter from Varax's sensory tendrils. But look at the signal structure. She expanded the hologram, highlighting specific patterns. This isn't random noise or ancient automated systems. The encoding method shows signs of evolution. It's based on principles we knew humanity was developing before the impact, but it's far more sophisticated. The Orcs representative, a being of pure energy contained within an environmental suit, moved forward. Dr. Thompson, are you suggesting that after 60 years of silence, a dead species has suddenly decided to make contact? Jessica took a deep breath. This was the moment that would either make her career or end it. No, Counselor. I'm suggesting they were never dead to begin with. She cooed up her next piece of evidence. The hologram shifted to show thermal imaging of Earth, taken just hours ago. Look at these heat signatures. They're regular, patterned, and most importantly, they're underground, way underground. She highlighted several spots across what used to be North America and Europe. These thermal blooms are consistent with large-scale geothermal energy usage. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just survived the impact. They'd adapted to it. Gone underground. Evolved. There's more, Jessica said, her confidence growing with each word. The signal isn't a greeting or a call for help. It's a warning. She decoded the message, letting the translation float above the chamber in universal script. The words sent a chill through the assembly. DRAKNID Fleet AP Approaching Galactic Cure. Resistance Protocols ready. Earth STNDs ready we to assist. Varax's color shifted to a deep purple of concern. The Drachnids are a myth, Dr. Thompson. A cautionary tale told to younglings. With all due respect, High Counselor, Jessica pulled up one final piece of data. Myths don't leave quantum wake signatures. This was recorded by our deep space arrays 12 hours ago. The hologram showed a massive fleet of biological ships, moving with the coordinated grace of a hive mind. As the council chamber descended into chaos, Jessica allowed herself a small smile. Humanity hadn't just survived. They'd been preparing. And now, faced with a threat that could destroy the galaxy, they were ready to emerge from their underground fortress and show the universe why you should never count humans out. The question was, would the Council be wise enough to accept their help? Commander Mike Sullivan stood at the helm of the Zelaxian scout ship Dawn Trader, watching Earth grow larger in the main viewport. The planet bore little resemblance to the Paradise world, documented in pre-impact archives. Angry storms churned across the surface, and the atmosphere shimmered with an unsettling reddish tinge. Aftermath of the asteroid that should have ended humanity. Atmospheric toxicity at 300% of Xylaxian tolerance, his science officer reported, her scales shifting to a nervous green. Surface temperature at 122 degrees Celsius. No way anything's living up there, Commander. Sullivan stroked his graying beard, eyes fixed on the thermal anomalies they'd been sent to investigate. Then explained those energy signatures, Tilara. Dead planets don't power themselves. The answer came sooner than expected. Their comm system crackled to life with a crystal-clear transmission. Xylaxian vessel Dawn Trader, this is Colonel Amanda Hayes of Earth Defense Command. You're cleared for descent. Transmitting coordinates now. Sullivan exchanged shocked looks with his bridge crew. The voice was unmistakably human, speaking perfect galactic standard. Before he could respond, a series of landing coordinates scrolled across their screens, directing them toward what used to be the North American continent. Colonel Hayes, Sullivan managed, we're reading lethal surface conditions. Follow the beacon, Commander. Hayes interrupted, a hint of amusement in her voice. Trust me, surface conditions won't be a problem. As they descended through the roiling atmosphere, Sullivan noticed something odd. Their sensors were picking up a cylindrical corridor of stable air, leading straight down. Some kind of force field was holding back the toxic atmosphere, creating a safe passage. By the first light, Tilara whispered, her scales now a pale blue of astonishment. The ground below them was splitting open like a massive metal flower, revealing a gigantic shaft descending into Earth's crust. Energy readings were off the charts. The Dawn Trader followed the guidance system down, through layers of reinforced walls and electromagnetic containment fields. After what seemed like an eternity, they emerged into a cavern so vast their sensors couldn't map its full extent. Welcome to New Denver, Colonel Hayes's voice came again. Population 3 million. One of 15 major underground arcologies currently operating on Earth. Sullivan's crew stared in stunned silence. Before them stretched a city that rivaled any he'd seen in his centuries of space exploration. Massive fusion-powered sun lamps created artificial daylight. Parks and agricultural sectors spread out in concentric circles around a central spire. Magnetic trains zipped between different levels, and everywhere he looked, humans went about their lives, as if living half a kilometer underground was the most natural thing in the world. Their ship settled onto a landing pad, and Sullivan watched a welcoming committee approach through the transparent docking tube. Colonel Hayes led the group, a tall woman with sharp features and the confident stride of someone used to command. Behind her came a mix of military and civilian personnel, all wearing uniforms that seemed to blend practical functionality with an aesthetic that spoke of a culture that had evolved in isolation from the rest of the galaxy. Impressive, isn't it? Hayes asked 20 minutes later, as she led them through the city's central district. The impact gave us about 72 hours to get underground. We'd been preparing for something like this since the 21st century, just not quite on this scale. But the energy requirements alone. Tilara began, her scientific curiosity overcoming her shock. Geothermal power, mainly, Hayes explained. The same impact that drove us underground cracked the crust in ways that gave us access to the planet's heat. She was cut off by a blaring alarm. Above them, through the transparent ceiling of the cavern, a bright light flashed across the toxic sky. Ah, perfect timing, Hayes smiled. Watch this, Commander. You're about to see why nobody's found us until now. Sullivan's jaw dropped as multiple defense platforms emerged from hidden silos. In perfect coordination, they tracked and obliterated an incoming asteroid, their weapons converting the space rock into harmless vapor before it could threaten the arcology. That, Hayes said with evident pride, was a small one. But after what happened in 2157, we don't take chances with rocks from space anymore. Sullivan looked at the human colonel with new respect and not a small amount of fear. In 60 years of isolation, humanity hadn't just survived. They'd turned their entire planet into a fortress. 300 feet beneath the ruins of Chicago, Dr. Robert Martinez watched the alien diplomats pick at their lab-grown steaks. The dining hall of Central Command had been decorated to impress, with holographic windows displaying scenes from Earth's surface as it had appeared before the impact. A small touch of irony, he thought, serving perfectly replicated pre-impact cuisine to aliens in an underground bunker. The atmospheric scrubbers should have the surface habitable in another decade, Martinez said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Though honestly, most of us prefer it down here now. Easier to defend. Commander Sullivan looked up from his plate, his Zylaxian features arranged in what Martinez had learned was their expression of concern. Defend against what, Doctor? Your Colonel Hayes has already demonstrated your impressive asteroid defense network. Martinez exchanged a glance with General Henderson, who gave him a slight nod. Time to show them. Computer, secure Protocol 7, Martinez commanded. The holographic windows darkened, and a new image materialized above the dinner table. The scene played out in horrifying clarity. A biological ship, massive and grotesque, consuming a space station whole. The metal and ceramics disappeared into the ship's structure as its surface rippled and reformed. This footage was captured by one of our deep space probes 4 months ago, Martinez explained. The Drachnids aren't a myth, Commander. They're evolving. Lara, Sullivan's science officer, had turned a sickly shade of gray. That's impossible. The Council's archives suggest the Drachnids were destroyed millennia ago. The Council, General Henderson interrupted, his voice gruff, has a habit of assuming things are dead just because they go quiet. He gestured at the humans around the table. How's that working out so far? Martinez queued up another recording. This one showed a Drachnid fleet engaging what appeared to be a highly advanced civilization's defense force. Energy weapons splashed harmlessly against the biological ship's surfaces. With each hit, their hull structure adapted, developing resistance to whatever weapon was used against them. Their neural network allows them to evolve in real time, Martinez continued. Energy weapons, quantum torpedoes, plasma cannons, they learn to counter each attack within seconds. The more advanced the weapon, the faster they adapt. Sullivan's translator struggled to convey his next words. How did you defeat their scout force? Martinez smiled. We didn't use advanced weapons. He pressed a control, and a new hologram appeared. A crude-looking human vessel bristling with what appeared to be mining equipment. We used industrial mining lasers, shaped charges, and good old-fashioned kinetic impacts. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. Industrial equipment. Hilara's scales flickered in confusion. Against a Class 5 hostile species. The Drachnids evolved to counter weapons, Henderson explained, leaning forward. Their adaptive capabilities are designed to analyze and counter things that are meant to cause harm. But our mining equipment, it's designed to cut rock, to drill, to break things apart for practical purposes. Their neural network couldn't categorize it as a weapon fast enough. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Galactic Council's mighty fleets, with their advanced energy weapons and quantum technology, would be worse than useless against the Drachnid threat. But humanity, forced by circumstance to maintain and improve upon primitive technology, had accidentally discovered their weakness. Martinez stood, walking to a wall panel that slid aside at his touch. He removed a small data crystal and placed it before Sullivan. This contains everything we know about the Drachnid's movements. They're heading for the galactic core, consuming everything in their path. We estimate they'll reach the first Council world in less than 6 months. Why show us this? Sullivan asked, though Martinez suspected he already knew the answer. Because we're offering our help, Henderson responded. Earth's entire industrial capacity, our fleet, our weapons. Primitive as they may seem to you, but we have conditions. Of course you do. Sullivan's translator managed to convey both resignation and respect. Martinez retook his seat. Earth joins the Council as a full member, not a protectorate. We maintain our military independence. And most importantly, he paused, making eye contact with each alien present. The Council acknowledges that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Above them, the hologram continued to play, showing the Drachnid fleet's inexorable advance toward the heart of galactic civilization. The only question was, would the Council's pride doom them all, or would they accept help from the supposedly extinct species that had found their weakness? The Galactic Council's emergency chamber had never seen anything quite like General James "Iron Jack" Henderson. He walked past the ornate alien delegations in his plain military uniform, combat boots echoing against the crystalline floor. The holographic displays around him showed real-time footage of the approaching Drachnid fleet, their biological ships consuming everything in their path. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all configurations, Henderson began, ignoring the traditional council protocols. I'll skip the pleasantries. You've all seen the data. The Drachnid fleet will reach Centauri Prime in less than 2 weeks. Your most advanced weapons are useless against them. High Counselor Varax's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with irritation. General Henderson, while we appreciate Earth's unexpected survival and your warning, surely you don't expect. A sharp alarm cut through the chamber. Henderson's lips curled into a knowing smile. Right on schedule, he said, tapping his wrist computer. I took the liberty of positioning one of our ships near the Proxima Centauri relay station. Counselors, if you'll direct your attention to the main display. The chamber's central hologram shifted to show a massive Drachnid scout ship approaching the station. Several council members recoiled at its organic appearance, a twisted mass of biological material that seemed to drink in light itself. But what happened next caused the entire chamber to fall silent. A small angular vessel appeared from behind Proxima's magnetic field. By council standards, it looked ancient, more like a deep space mining vessel than a warship. The Drachnid ship immediately moved to engage, its surface already rippling with adaptive countermeasures. That's the U.S. Appalachia, Henderson explained, his voice carrying clear pride. One of our first deep space vessels built after the impact. Her main weapon, he paused for effect, a modified plasma drill designed to cut through asteroid cores. The chamber watched in stunned silence as the human ship unleashed a concentrated beam of superheated plasma. The Drachnid vessel's adaptive hull, designed to counter military weapons, failed to recognize the industrial mining tool as a threat until it was too late. The beam carved through its biological structure like a hot knife through butter. By the first light, whispered the Orcs representative. That's impossible. Our quantum cannons couldn't even scratch their hulls. That's because you overthought it, Henderson replied, queuing up another tactical display. The Drachnids evolved to counter weapons. Their neural network categorizes and adapts to threats based on hostile intent. But our mining equipment, it's just doing its job, cutting through material. Simple, efficient, deadly. He strode to the center of the chamber, his presence commanding attention. We've developed an entire arsenal based on this principle. Kinetic impact weapons, industrial cutting tools, mining explosives, all modified for space combat. The Drachnids can't adapt because there's nothing to adapt to. It's like trying to evolve resistance to a rock slide. The council erupted in overlapping discussions. Henderson waited patiently until Varax called for order. You understand what you're proposing? The High Counselor asked. To arm council ships with mining equipment? No. Henderson's voice turned sharp. I'm proposing a joint fleet action. Your ships provide distraction and support, while Earth's vessels do what we do best: improvise, adapt, and overcome. But we have conditions. He projected a new hologram, Earth's terms of alliance. The council chamber buzzed with surprise at their audacity. Full membership in the council, Henderson read aloud. Recognition of Earth as a sovereign military power. Access to trade routes and technology exchange programs. And most importantly, acknowledgement that technological advancement isn't always about making things more complicated. A Medusan delegate chimed in protest. "This is unprecedented. You're asking us to." Another alarm cut through the chamber. This time, the hologram showed 3 more Drachnid ships entering the Centauri system. "You're out of time," Henderson stated flatly. "The Drachnids aren't coming anymore. They're here. So you have a choice. Accept our help on our terms, or watch your civilization be consumed by an enemy you can't defeat." He stood in the center of the chamber, the grizzled veteran surrounded by beings of unimaginable advancement, and waited. Around them, the holograms showed the Drachnid ships advancing, their biological hulls gleaming with deadly purpose. The fate of the galaxy hung on whether the Council could swallow its pride and admit that sometimes the simplest solution was the right one. Major Emily Ross couldn't help but grin at the shocked expressions on the alien delegates' faces as the massive blast doors of Production Facility 7 rolled open. The underground complex stretched for miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, a testament to humanity's determination to survive and thrive. "Welcome to what we call the Forge," she announced, leading the Council delegation past rows of enormous manufacturing lines. "When we went underground, we had to completely rethink our industrial base. Turns out that was a blessing in disguise." The Medusan delegate's crystalline form vibrated with what Ross had learned was their version of disbelief. "These are warships," it chimed, gesturing at the vessels under construction. "We prefer to call them multi-purpose vessels," Ross replied, stopping at a viewing platform. Below them, workers swarmed over a ship that looked more like a heavily armored mining vessel than a traditional warship. "This is the U.S. Thunderchild. Those primitive protrusions you're looking at, industrial plasma cutters, modified asteroid drills, and electromagnetic harpoons." A holographic display activated, showing the ship's specifications. Tilara, the Xylaxian science officer who'd remained on Earth as a liaison, leaned forward with professional interest. "Your power systems are remarkably inefficient," she noted, scales shifting to a puzzled blue. Deliberately, Ross smiled, tapping the display. "We found that the Drachnids have trouble adapting to weapons that waste energy. Their neural network expects precision and efficiency. Our plasma cutters spray excess heat in all directions, makes them harder to counter." She led them deeper into the facility, past testing chambers where engineers were firing weaponized mining equipment at samples of Drachnid biomatter. The alien material writhed and attempted to adapt, but against the brute force industrial tools, it failed repeatedly. "This is our pride and joy," Ross announced, stopping at a heavily shielded chamber. Inside, technicians worked on what looked like a massive drill bit composed of dark, almost light-absorbing material. "We call it the Planet Cracker. It's powered by quantum-entangled warheads, technology we developed studying the very asteroid that drove us underground." The Council's chief military advisor, a being of pure energy contained in an environmental suit, moved closer to the viewport. "You weaponized the technology that nearly destroyed you. Poetic, isn't it?" Ross led them to the next section, where rows of smaller vessels were being outfitted. "These are our Wolverine-class interceptors. They're basically armored space trucks carrying industrial cutting equipment. Not pretty, but effective." A demonstration played on nearby screens, a swarm of Wolverines overwhelming a Drachnid ship, their crude but powerful tools tearing through its biological hull while it tried futilely to adapt. "The real genius," Ross continued, heading toward a secure briefing room, "is in how we network them. Each ship operates independently, using different tools and techniques. The Drachnids can't adapt to all of them simultaneously." Inside the briefing room, Ross activated a larger tactical display. It showed the full extent of Earth's military production. Dozens of facilities like this one, all churning out vessels that would look archaic to most spacefaring races. "We can have the first fleet ready in 2 weeks, she stated, bringing up deployment projections. 300 capital ships, 2,000 Wolverines, and enough support vessels tow. An alarm blared, cutting her off. The tactical display shifted, showing a Drachnid scout ship that had just emerged near Jupiter. "Perfect timing," Ross said, hitting a command on her console. "Watch this." The delegates watched as a seemingly uninhabited section of Jupiter's largest moon split open. A vessel emerged, ugly, angular, and bristling with industrial equipment. The Drachnid ship immediately began adapting, its hull rippling with countermeasures. The human vessel didn't bother with fancy tactics. It simply fired its main weapon, a massive mining laser designed to cut through planetary cores. The beam pierced the Drachnid ship's adaptive hull before it could analyze and counter the primitive technology. Ross turned to the stunned delegates. "So," she said, her smile now decidedly predatory, "shall we discuss production quotas? The Drachnids aren't going to stop themselves." Above them, miles of rock separated them from the hostile surface of their transformed world. But down here, in humanity's underground fortress factories, they had built something the Drachnids couldn't counter: hope. Captain Derek "Wildcard" Wilson stood on the bridge of the U.S. Thunderchild, watching the swirling gases of Alpha Centauri's outer rim. Around his vessel, 300 ships of Earth's primitive fleet held position alongside the Galactic Council's sleek warships. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. The Council's vessels looked like works of art, while the human ships resembled industrial equipment bolted to engines. "Drachnid fleet approaching," his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, reported. 15 capital ships, over 1,000 support vessels. They're moving in their standard consumption formation. Wilson nodded, keying his fleet-wide comm. "All ships, this is Wildcard. Remember your training. Don't get fancy. Don't try to outthink them. We're not here to win beauty contests. We're here to get a job done." The Drachnid fleet emerged from light speed like a nightmare given form. Their biological ships rippled and pulsed, already beginning to adapt to the Council vessel's energy signatures. The Council fleet opened fire first, their quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons splashing harmlessly against the Drachnid's evolving hulls. "Right on schedule," Wilson muttered. "All Earth vessels, execute Operation Sledgehammer. Wolverine squadrons, you have hunting permission." The human fleet burst into action. Unlike the Council's coordinated attack patterns, each Earth ship moved independently, seemingly chaotic. The Thunderchild led the charge, its massive mining laser powering up with a deep thrum that vibrated through the hull. "First blood's ours," Wilson announced, watching his targeting display. "Fire the main cutter." The beam that erupted from Thunderchild's bow wasn't elegant. It wasn't precise. It was a massive, sustained blast of superheated plasma designed to bore through asteroid cores. The Drachnid flagship's adaptive hull tried to analyze and counter the beam, but there was nothing sophisticated to counter. It was pure, brute force industrial might. The beam carved through the biological ship like a blowtorch through butter. "Wolverine squadrons, exploit that breach," Wilson ordered, watching as swarms of smaller human ships poured through the gap. They looked like angry wasps next to the massive capital ships, their industrial cutting tools tearing into the Drachnid vessel's exposed innards. The space around Alpha Centauri erupted into chaos. Council ships provided covering fire, keeping the Drachnid's attention split, while Earth's vessels did the real damage. Mining lasers, plasma cutters, and electromagnetic harpoons, tools designed for industrial work, proved devastatingly effective against the biological hulls. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, "they're trying to adapt, shifting their hull composition to resist our cutting tools." Wilson grinned. Exactly as predicted. All ships switched to secondary loadouts. The human fleet seamlessly transitioned to their backup weapons, different types of industrial equipment that the Drachnids would have to adapt to all over again. It was like trying to evolve resistance to every tool in a workshop simultaneously. A Drachnid ship loomed before them, its surface writhing as it tried to counter multiple types of attacks at once. The Thunderchild's reinforced bow smashed through its weakened hull. Sometimes the oldest solution was still the best one. "Council vessel Starweaver is taking heavy damage," Rodriguez reported. 3 Drachnid ships converging on their position. Not on my watch. Wilson keyed a specific frequency. Wolverine Squadron Delta. Show them why we named you after Earth's most tenacious predator. The squadron of smaller ships broke off their current engagement, swarming the Drachnid vessels attacking the Council ship. Their combination of industrial cutting tools and pure aggressive tenacity forced the biological ships to divide their adaptive capabilities, creating weaknesses. Status report. Wilson called out as the Thunderchild carved through another Drachnid vessel. 8 enemy capital ships destroyed. Rodriguez reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Their formation is breaking down. They've never encountered attacks they couldn't adapt to. They don't know how to handle it. Wilson watched as the mighty Drachnid fleet, terror of the galaxy, began to retreat from humanity's crude but effective assault. On his tactical display, he could see Council observers watching in amazement as Earth's primitive technology accomplished what their advanced weapons couldn't. Send word to command, he ordered, allowing himself a small smile. The sledgehammer works. Recommend immediate production of secondary loadout packages for all Council vessels. Let's show the galaxy that sometimes the simplest solution hits hardest. The battle wasn't over, but humanity had proven its point. Sometimes the oldest tools were the best ones, especially when your enemy had evolved beyond expecting them. Dr. Thomas Parker's fingers flew across the holographic interface in the secured bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, dozens of cybernetic specialists monitored streams of data flowing through quantum channels. The air was thick with tension. This was humanity's true masterstroke, and everything had to be perfect. Drachnid hive mind detected, announced Dr. Maria Reyes, her augmented reality display reflecting off her glasses. They're responding to the physical attacks exactly as predicted. Their neural network is fully engaged in adaptation protocols. Parker nodded, allowing himself a grim smile. Perfect. They're so busy trying to adapt to our hardware that their software is wide open. Begin Operation Chaos. The bunker's massive quantum computers hummed to life. On the main display, a visualization showed their viral code, based on mapped human neural patterns, beginning its infiltration of the Drachnid hive mind. Sir, called out Lieutenant Chen from his monitoring station, the Council's observers are requesting an update. They want to know why we're not launching a conventional cyber attack. Tell them to watch, Parker replied, his eyes fixed on the data streams. They're about to see why individualism beats conformity every time. The virus they'd created wasn't designed to destroy or disable. It was engineered to do something far more devastating. Introduce the concept of individual thought to a species that had evolved to think only as a collective. First contact with Hive Mind Core, Rise reported, her voice tense. Uploading human neural patterns. Now. On the tactical displays, the Drachnid fleet's synchronized movements began to falter. Their biological ships, used to operating with perfect coordination, started showing signs of confusion. It's working, Parker breathed, watching the chaos spread. Feed them more. Emotions, personal memories, individual desires. Everything that makes us human. The effect was like dropping a stone into a perfectly still pond. Ripples of individuality spread through the hive mind, creating cascading waves of confusion and discovery. Ships that had never known independent thought suddenly found themselves piloted by beings experiencing free will for the first time. Sir, Chen's voice was excited now. The Drachnid ships, they're attacking each other. The main screen showed the battle in real time. The mighty Drachnid fleet was tearing itself apart as newly individualized crew members rejected their hive mind's control. Some ships tried to flee, others turned their weapons on their former allies, and some simply drifted, their crews too overwhelmed by their first taste of independence to act. Secondary effect confirmed, Rise reported, her fingers dancing across her interface. The biological ships are losing adaptive capabilities. Without hive mind coordination, they can't evolve fast enough to counter our weapons. Parker keyed his comm to the fleet command channel. Captain Wilson, the doors open. Show them what humanity does best. The combined Earth Council fleet surged forward. This time, the Drachnid ships couldn't adapt to the industrial weapons tearing through their hulls. Their perfect coordination was shattered, replaced by chaos and confusion. "We're receiving transmissions from individual Drachnid ships," Chen announced, his voice filled with disbelief. They're asking for help. The newly awakened ones want to defect." Parker exchanged looks with his team. This was more than they'd hoped for. They hadn't just defeated the Drachnids, they'd liberated them from their own evolutionary prison. "Signal the fleet to hold fire on any ship broadcasting surrender codes," he ordered. "And get me a channel to the Council. They need to prepare for something they've never dealt with before: Drachnid refugees." The main screen showed the battle's final moments. The remaining hostile ships, still under hive mind control, made a desperate attempt to retreat. But their movements were clumsy, uncoordinated, like a body trying to function with only half its nervous system. "Operation Chaos is complete," Rise said quietly. "The hive mind is permanently fractured. We just changed their entire species." Parker looked at the displays showing scattered Drachnid ships now broadcasting peace signals. Humanity hadn't just won a battle, they'd ended a war by sharing the very thing that had made them survive against all odds: the power of individual thought and adaptability. "Begin documentation for the Council," he ordered. "They'll want to know how we did this, though I doubt they'll understand the irony. We defeated the ultimate adaptation engine by teaching it to think for itself." Above them, the galaxy was changing. And humanity, the species that refused to die, had proven that the most powerful weapon wasn't technology. It was the thing that made them human in the first place: the ability to think independently and choose their own path. New Atlanta gleamed like a diamond beneath the Earth's crust, its massive cavern systems now hosting the largest gathering of alien diplomats in human history. Admiral Lisa McCarthy stood at the podium in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly Hall, her dress uniform pristine, her gray hair catching the light from the artificial sun arrays above. 2 months ago, she began, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber, the galaxy faced extinction at the hands of the Drachnid hive mind. Today, we're not just celebrating victory, we're welcoming new allies. She gestured to a section of the chamber where several Drachnid representatives sat. Their biological forms, once synchronized in hive mind uniformity, now showed distinct individual characteristics. Each had chosen their own color patterns, their own way of expressing themselves. "The Council asked how we knew our plan would work," McCarthy continued, allowing herself a small smile. "The truth is, we didn't. But humanity has a long history of doing the impossible, simply because we didn't know it couldn't be done." The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing scenes from the past 2 months. Earth ships teaching freed Drachnid crews how to think independently, Council vessels being retrofitted with primitive human technology, and the first joint human Council Drachnid engineering teams working on new hybrid technologies. "We didn't just survive the impact that should have ended us," McCarthy said, her voice growing stronger. "We used it. Every challenge, every setback, every near-extinction event became a lesson. We kept our old technologies alongside our new ones. We maintained our individuality while building a global community. We turned our entire planet into both a fortress and a cradle of innovation." Commander Sullivan, now Earth's permanent liaison to the Council, nodded in appreciation. His scales had shifted to a deep blue of respect, a color change he'd picked up from his extended time with humans. "But our greatest achievement wasn't military," McCarthy continued, gesturing to where Dr. Parker sat with his team. "It wasn't our weapons or our technology. It was understanding that true strength comes from diversity of thought, from the power of individual minds working together by choice, not by force." The displays shifted to show the new Joint Fleet exercises. Council ships now bristled with human industrial equipment alongside their advanced weapons. Freed Drachnid vessels, their biological hulls now expressing individual patterns, demonstrated new techniques that combined their adaptive capabilities with independent tactical thinking. "The galaxy is entering a new era," McCarthy announced. "One where we recognize that advancement isn't always about making things more complex. Sometimes it's about remembering our roots, about combining the old with the new, about finding strength in our differences rather than forcing uniformity." She paused, looking out over the assembled representatives of 1,000 worlds. "Earth is honored to join the Galactic Council as a full member, but we're even more honored to help forge a new kind of galactic community, one that values both innovation and tradition, both unity and individuality." The chamber erupted in applause, each species expressing approval in their own unique way. Even the freed drachnids participated, their bodies pulsing with colors of joy and independence. As the ceremony concluded, McCarthy found herself looking up at the artificial sky of New Atlanta. Somewhere above the miles of rock and metal, Earth's surface was still healing from the impact that had driven humanity underground. But they had turned that catastrophe into an opportunity, that near extinction into evolution. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Dr. Parker joined her at the observation window, watching the city's magnetic trains zip between levels. "We did it," McCarthy said quietly. "Not just survived, thrived." "Better than that," Parker replied with a grin. "We taught the galaxy that sometimes the best way forward is to remember where you came from." Speaking of which, the Drachnid representatives want to see the old mining equipment museums. They say understanding their past helps them appreciate their future. McCarthy smiled. Above them, the artificial sun began its programmed descent, creating a perfect underground sunset. Humanity had gone from nearly extinct to changing the course of galactic history, not through overwhelming force or advanced technology, but through the very things that had kept them alive in the darkness: ingenuity, adaptability, and the unshakable belief that the impossible was just another problem waiting to be solved. The future was bright, both above ground and below it.